It is 6:30. I'm going to head and call this Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for September 7th to order, and we do have a quorum present. The first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes for the August 17th meeting. If there are no additions or corrections, may I have a motion?
Move to approve the August 17th meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion by Karen, second by Sheila. Please vote.
Alvin, can you hit your button again?
Alvin, did you? Motion passes 6-0. Next item is a regular hearing. We have a couple of them tonight for plats. The first one is the final plat of the Greenland Hills Addition, Lot 7R, Block C, on 0.422 acres out of the J.W. King Survey, abstract number 0696A, zoned R-7.5 single-family residential district, located at 125 Simmons Avenue, being a replat of lots 7 and 8, Block C of the Greenland Hills Addition.
Good evening, Commissioners. Louisville Development staff has reviewed the plat for Greenland Hills Addition, has identified a list of deficiencies. This is a residential replat and will need to be brought back forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission once it has been correctly noticed for a public hearing. There's also a variance associated with this final plat. Staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission disapprove the final plat of the Greenland Hills Addition for all the deficiencies listed and be brought back before the Planning and Zoning Commission for a public hearing for a residential replat with a variance. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Commissioners, are there any questions for Jonathan? So this one will be coming back for another hearing.
That's correct.
Okay. If there are no questions, may I have a motion?
I move to disapprove the final plat of Greenland Hills Addition for deficiencies listed above and be brought back before the Planning and Zoning Commission for a public hearing for residential replat with a variance for front entry.
Second.
Motion by Aram, second by Jordan. Motion passes 6-0. The next plat is a final plat of the corners at Valley Parkway Addition, lots 6RA and 6RB, Block A, on 1.317 acres out of the Jesse Watkins Survey, abstract number 1328, zoned local commercial district, located at 2320 South Valley Parkway, being a replat of Lot 6, Block A, the corners at Valley Parkway Addition.
Good evening, Commissioners. So staff did review this plat. We did find some deficiencies, and we are recommending disapproval this evening, delegation to staff authority to approve when the listed deficiencies are met, and we will bring it back to the chair for signature.
Thank you. Michelle, do we have any questions for Michelle, Commissioners? And if not, may I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move for the disapproval of the plat for the final plat for the corners at Valley Parkway for the deficiencies noted and delegate the staff the authority to bring back after the deficiencies have been corrected.
Motion is by Sheila, second by Karen. And vote now. Motion passes 6-0. The next regular hearing is a final plat of Legacy Edition, lots 2R1 and 2R2, Block A, on 11.15 acres out of E. Brown Survey, abstract number 62, Zone Plan Development Mixed Use District, located at the southwest corner of Grandy's Lane and South Stemmons Freeway, being a replat of lots 2R, a portion of lot 3, Summit Ridge Apartment Addition.
Good evening, Commissioners. Staff has reviewed the final plat for Legacy Edition. This is the multifamily and the retail store with the proposed dog park that you guys reviewed as a plan development. This is a plat that's associated with the engineering site plan portion of it. Staff found some deficiencies, and staff recommends that the P&Z Commission disapprove the final plat for the deficiencies listed above and delegate to staff the authority to accept and approve the plat once the deficiencies are corrected.
Thank you, June. Do we have any questions for June? If not, may I have a motion, please?
I move to disapprove the final plat of Legacy Edition lots 2R1 and 2R Block A for the deficiencies listed above and delegate to staff the authority to accept and approve the plat once the listed deficiencies are corrected.
Motion by Aram.
Second.
Second by Alvin. Vote now. Motion passes 6-0. The next regular hearing is a final plat of Castle Hills Windhaven Parkway and Josie Lane addition, containing 77 residential lots and 10 HOA lots on 11.386 acres out of the R.F. Hardin survey, abstract number 613, with a zoning designation of Townhouse 2 District, located on the south side of Windhaven Parkway, approximately 820 feet east of North Josie Lane.
Commissioners, staff has reviewed this plat and recommends that the P&Z Commission disapprove the final plat of the Castle Hills Windhaven Parkway and Josie Lane addition for the deficiencies listed and delegate to staff the ability to accept and approve the plat once the deficiencies are corrected. The final plat will be brought to chair for the signature.
Thank you, June. Do we have any questions for June? And if not, then may I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we disapprove the final plat of Castle Hills Windhaven Parkway and Josie Lane addition for the deficiencies noted and delegate the staff the ability to accept and approve that plat once the deficiencies are corrected.
I second that motion.
Motion by Sheila, seconded by Karen. Go ahead and vote. Motion passes 6-0. The last regular hearing for this evening is a preliminary plat of the Louisville Republic expansion on 21.543 acres out of the South Hayden survey, abstract number 525, zoned light industrial district and specific use district, located on the east side of Huffines Boulevard, approximately 200 feet south of Stonewall Drive and at the southern end of Barfneck Lane and western end of Oak Tree Lane.
Good evening, Commissioners. So this plat has also been reviewed by staff and is also being recommended for disapproval due to deficiencies, delegation to staff the authority to approve when deficiencies are met, and then would be brought back to the chair for signature. Staff is available for questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Do we have any questions for Michelle on this one? And if not, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I move that we disapprove the preliminary plat of Louisville Republic expansion for the deficiencies noted and delegate the staff the ability to approve it once the deficiencies are corrected.
I second the motion.
Motion by Sheila, second by Aram. And vote, please. And motion passes 6-0. We have two public hearings on the agenda for this evening under the zoning and special use permits. The first public hearing is a consideration of a special use permit for a boat display sales, outdoor, and repair facility on approximately 6.256 acres, legally described as lots 6, 7, and 8, Block A of Peck VR Addition, located on the north side of Valley Ridge Boulevard, approximately 80 feet west of North Keeley Avenue. This is zoned light industrial district as requested by Robert Schneeberg, Gonzalez and Schneeberg Engineering on behalf of Champion Investments LLC and Valley Ridge Properties LLC, the property owners.
Good evening, Commissioners. Buxton Marine is a boat sales and service facility. They actually currently exist in city of Louisville, and they want to relocate and build a new facility to accommodate their growing business. The site proposal includes 2 buildings. The main building will be for their sales and display showroom, and the second building will be for their service bay, and their overhead doors will be facing internally to the site, and their solid wall with glazing will be facing the Valley Ridge. With this proposal, they are providing 30-foot landscaping, and the building will be consist of 100% masonry built out of tilt-wall concrete, and that will have the main building accented with brick and stone that's exceeding that's about 60%. With this proposal, they are having a display area to the west of the site, close to their display building, and they will have storage area to the east of the site where it's near the Keeley intersection. On the Keeley intersection, because they have storage, they will provide the 8-foot tall masonry screening wall. In front of it, they will have some landscaping, including a planter area to highlight the corner where the people driving on Keeley or Valley Ridge can enjoy the enhanced landscaping. On the display area side, they're not required to provide solid fencing. However, they want to build a wrought iron fence for their own security. In front of it, they're planting crepe myrtle trees to provide additional screening. They do have one variance request associated with this. Typically for car lots, we ask that 1,000 square feet of display area where the cars for display are parked for car dealerships and so on to be parked at 1 per 1,000 square feet to accommodate any customers that will come and look at the cars. For their boat lot, they are proposing display areas, but their spaces, typically for cars 9 by 18, but they have much larger space proposed to accommodate the size of the boat. With that, their space is about 220% larger than typical, car parking space. So they're asking a variance for it to be parked at 1 per 2,000. That will kind of result about the similar number of parking spaces required per car in terms of per boat. Staff doesn't really see any hindrances to this. It will be considered by City Council for final approval. It's just presented to you as that is part of the request with this SUP consideration. They're not proposing any signage at this time, or whatever wall sign they put up, it will meet the regular land development ordinances. The applicant is here if you have questions, and staff is also available if you have any questions for staff.
Okay. Before I open the public hearing, Commissioners, do we have any questions for staff? Okay. At this time, I will go ahead and open the public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak on this item, please come forward and state your name. I believe there may be a sign-up sheet there, and we'll be happy to hear you. Okay, having no one come forward, I'm going ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners, is there any discussion on this? No? No? And may I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the special use permit as presented.
Motion by Sheila,
Second.
seconded by Karen. Go ahead and vote. And the motion passes 6-0.
This item will be heard by City. This item will be going to the City Council on the September 20th for second and final decision.
Thank you. The next public hearing is the consideration of a special use permit for heavy equipment outdoor display, sales and service on approximately 4.213 acres, legally described as a portion of Lot 1, Block A, Roadrunner Addition, located at 1690 State Highway 121 Business, Zone Heavy Industrial District, as requested by Caroline Russell, JCB Incorporated, on behalf of Christy Mulkey, Pied Piper Properties Limited, the property owner.
Good evening, Commissioners. JCB Equipment is an international construction equipment manufacturer. They're based out of England. They're looking to open a dealership in Louisville off of State Highway 121 Business. Their proposed site features a two-story building which is fronting Business 121. This building will primarily have a metal building material, but the 9 feet will be stone masonry. The site features some display areas along Business 121. They will have equipment, display, and storage, as well as additional parts for this equipment. That's all stored on the rear of this site. There's just some display area along 121. Business 121 is a brick veneer gateway, but the applicant has proposed to provide the full 30 feet of landscaping along Business 121. This 30 feet of landscaping is both on the north of the property and the south of the property. There's a billboard on site, and the applicant has agreed to remove this billboard once the sign lease is complete. And the lease expires on May 31st, 2027. And so as a part of this SUP, they will remove that billboard once the lease expires. Jeff Bell with JCB Equipment is available for questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have as well.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do we have any questions for John?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I had a question about the signage. So am I to understand there will be 2 signs in place because there's a lease on the freestanding one? Is there one on, I guess explain the signage.
Sure. So there's a billboard on site that advertises businesses off of Business 121. So they've agreed to remove that billboard once the lease on the sign is complete. So that'll be in 2027. All other signage on the site, they have some directional signage and they have building signage as well, but no other freestanding signage for JCB Equipment.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. At this time, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this item. Anybody wishing to speak on this, please come forward, state your name, and sign in. Having no one come forward, I'll go ahead now and close this public hearing. Commissioners, are there any discussion? No? May I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Karen. Second by Alvin. Vote now. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, Commissioners. This item will be appearing before City Council on September 20th for a second and final public hearing.
Thank you, John. The next public hearing is for some planning and zoning text amendments. This public hearing is a consideration of a recommendation for amendments to the Louisville City Code, Chapter 17, zoning of the Louisville City Code by amending Section 17-34, enforcement and application, to amend requirements for newly annexed areas.
Yes, Commissioner. So this text amendment is being brought forth in anticipation of the Castle Hills annexation. Currently, our ordinance reads that upon annexation, every property is given the interim zoning classification of agricultural open space. In Castle Hills, though, because we have been anticipating annexing them for quite some time, we have been giving every platted property a zoning designation, and you guys have seen those come through, with the intent that once we annex the property, we can use those zoning designations to give a permanent zoning. So what this text amendment would do is it would say that the zoning upon annexation is going to be agricultural open space unless there is already a designation on the plat, in which case that platted designation shall be the interim zoning classification. And this will allow for a more seamless transition until we have a plan development adopted for Castle Hills that further solidifies the standards that are specific to Castle Hills. This is important because it would impact everything from the timing of new engineering site plans for commercial properties, and it would also impact even more simple things such as single-family homeowners that want to put a shed in their backyard. We don't want to have a freeze on permits from the time of annexation to the time we get the plan development adopted. So that's why we feel this text amendment is important, and that's why we're bringing it forward to you tonight. If approved or recommended for approval by the commission tonight, it would go to City Council at their September 20th meeting. I'm here for questions if you have any.
Thanks, Michelle. Do we have any questions for Michelle on this item?
I do have a question for you, Michelle. With respect to the amendment, I'm understanding it to be to make sure that any property that was platted before annexation can still move forward. Mm-hmm. Is there, after the date of annexation, are there different rules in place?
So platting applies in the ETJ, as you all know, and so platting rules have always applied in Castle Hills. After we annex, platting rules will continue to apply out there, but they will then be subject to building permits through the city of Louisville and everything else, where they currently are not.
Gotcha,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I understand. Thank you.
Okay, at this time I will go ahead and open the public hearing on this item. Anybody who wishes to speak on this item, please come forward and state your name and sign in. Having no one come forward, I will go ahead now and close this public hearing. Commissioners, is there any discussion on this item? No? In case, may I have a motion, please?
I recommend approval of the proposed amendments to newly annexed areas as proposed.
Motion is by Aram, second is by Sheila. Go ahead and vote. Motion passes 6-0. We have some additional business this evening. Presentation of a complete street policy update.
Good evening, Commissioners. The City of Louisville is looking to update their complete streets policy. Myself and Sagar, the traffic engineer, have been working on this policy update. So in this presentation tonight, I'd like to go over exactly what complete streets is, where they fit into Louisville, why we need an updated policy, and what this new proposed policy will look like. So essentially, a complete street is a street that is built with all types of users, regardless of age and abilities in mind. So it's making sure that our public right-of-way can serve all our residents in Louisville with how they want to interact with the right-of-way. So a quick history of complete streets in Louisville. Back in 2011, complete street design was made part of the Main and Mill Streetscape project, which had a COG grant application. In 2017, the City of Louisville adopted a complete streets policy. This was brought back before you back in 2017 and then to City Council. This was a very sparse policy and was always intended to be updated with a more enhanced policy in the future. The original policy was adopted to qualify for a COG grant, but now our current policy is not effective because the scope is too limited. In the 2020 council retreat, Councilwoman Green pitched for equitable mobility. Equitable mobility is a large component of a complete streets policy. So with all these things in mind, that's why we're before you tonight for an updated complete streets policy. So where does a complete street fit into Louisville? Elements of complete streets are found in almost all of Louisville's long-range plans. It's this 10-minute walk to a park, ensuring that all residents have a safe and effective route from their house to a park in Louisville. It's in the Sustainability Master Plan with enhanced urban forests or urban streetscaping, as well as the opportunity for less cars on the roadway, more transportation options. It's mentioned in our small area plans, our transit-oriented development, all the way down to the 2025 vision plan update. Many elements of complete streets are found in every big move, and it's called out by name under the Old Town big move. So many of these elements are already found in our long-range plans. Having an effective policy has the opportunity to bring everything together. So what exactly does a complete street look like? Well, there's no singular design of what a complete street is. It's unique and it responds to the context of where it is. The picture I have up on the screen right now, this is what a complete street would look like in a more suburban setting. Obviously, there's still room for automobile traffic, but it does have enhanced pedestrian crossing as well as separation between pedestrian paths and the roadway, creating a comfortable pedestrian environment. One thing I just want to quickly note is throughout my presentation, we'll be bringing up pedestrians and bicyclists often with this presentation. And I want to be clear that complete streets are for all type of traffic. And it's just that in current street design, the pedestrian and any bicycle traffic is often forgotten. So that's why this will be coming up time and time again. But it's important to know that these complete streets just respond to the community context. So there's a lot of different components of a complete street, from bicycle lanes, automobile lanes, curbside management, transit facilities, looking at lighting, how that lighting will affect making sure there's no light pollution with any pedestrian or street lighting, all the way down to the utilities, green infrastructure, and drainage. All these elements are a part of complete streets. So it's not just the pavement itself, but it's really everything that takes place in the city's right-of-way. I'll let Sagar speak to complete street projects we have in Louisville.
City of Louisville has already been doing complete streets in recent projects, and there are upcoming projects that are under design that include the complete streets elements. And further along the presentation, I'll talk about the 2015 bond projects, which could be considered for complete streets to determine whether they're a good fit and what the cost increase would be. Main Street and Mill Street project was a recently completed streetscape improvement project that included complete street elements. Complete streets, we need to consider context sensitivity. Context sensitivity is nothing but the setting that the streets are in. Main Street, Old Town Louisville Old Town Louisville is an area where there are shops, restaurants, offices, housing, and commercial areas. Main Street and Old Town is envisioned to be a mixed-use development area where people will live, shop, dine, and entertain. And Main Street and Mill Street are two major arteries that run through the heart of Old Town Louisville, serving the mixed-use development in the area. In this slide, you can see the before and after pictures of Mill Street looking north from Purnell Street. The users of the street would be, vehicles and freight trucks, but also pedestrians, bicyclists, wheelchair-bound persons, and transit users. In order to illustrate, I want to delve a little bit deeper and take you through the perspective of each of these users. Perspective for a pedestrian. Let's assume a mother of a 4-year-old kid is walking with a child down the sidewalk on Mill Street. She would feel comfortable walking down the wide sidewalk because the sidewalks were generally built to be 6 to 8 foot wide. In some instances where there were right-of-way constraints, we had 5 feet, but generally they're 5 foot or higher. When walking down Mill Street, she even let her kid walk a few paces ahead of her because the sidewalk is not butting up against the 35-mile-per-hour travel lane, which is how it used to be. But now it is separated by a parking lane buffer and a landscape buffer. So it would feel much comfortable to walk down the street. During the daytime, she would feel comfortable walking under the shade of the trees that were planted. She may take some rest at one of the benches that was installed. During nighttime, she would feel safe walking under the lighting provided by the street lighting that was installed. And finally, she'll be more vulnerable to vehicular traffic when required to cross the street at an intersection. The curb extensions, curb bulb outs that were built with the project narrow the street, the crossing distance, thereby reducing the time that she would be exposed to vehicular traffic, making for a quick crossing, making it safer. Also, the colored crosswalk will make the motorists see her better. So that's how we provide a safer access for pedestrians. For bicyclists, now bicyclists have 5 foot wide dedicated bike lanes, both on Mill Street and Main Street, where they can operate. They can not only access the length of Main Street and Mill Street, but there's also connectivity to the Louisville Trail Network. The perspective of a wheelchair-bound person. With the project, ADA-compliant sidewalks and curb ramps were constructed, making it very accessible for a wheelchair-bound person. Because of the wide sidewalks that were installed, 6 foot wide sidewalk, a wheelchair person may operate even with another wheelchair in the sidewalk, even with another wheelchair coming in the opposite direction and not have to stop. So it makes it comfortable for a wheelchair-bound person. So perspective of transit users, the Main Street and Mill Street were both built as transit-oriented development, providing multimodal access to the Old Town train station. Perspective of motorist and truck driver. Car drivers and truck drivers still enjoy the same level of service that they used to have. Main Street, Main Street and Mill Street project was deliberately constructed upon the completion of the Valley Ridge Boulevard Extension project. The Valley Ridge Boulevard Extension project has had a dramatic impact of reduction in the traffic on Main Street and Mill Street, reducing the pass-through traffic. On Mill Street, we saw a 40% reduction in traffic after Valley Ridge was open. Main Street saw a 20% reduction in traffic. This made Main Street and Mill Street excellent candidates for a road diet, and thereby providing more space to provide landscaping, parking lane. So the benefits of building Main Street and Mill Street were, it provides a true multimodal trips. For example, a resident of Hebron Station 121 apartments, he could come to Old Town, enjoy a concert at the Wayne Ferguson Plaza, and walk over to one of the restaurants, dine at the restaurants, and then walk half a mile or bike half a mile to the transit station and take the train to the Hebron Station. provides for economic activity in Old Town Louisville. In summary, Main Street and Mill Street improvements as complete streets facilitates the revitalization of Old Town and the creation of bustling, thriving downtown Louisville. Leonard Street is another recently completed CIP project that had complete street elements in it. The context for this project is that it is located a block away from the Old Town train station. Or you see there's a before and after picture of Leonard Street. In the past, it used to be a car-centric street, but you see the amenities that were built with Leonard Street. You see on the Aura Old Town is a residential development, and people living in this area have safer access to the downtown train station because of the wider sidewalks, curb extensions, on-street parking, providing traffic calming, trees, and street lighting planted. Some of the upcoming projects that will have complete street elements are Summit Avenue. Summit Avenue will run through the heart of the Northern Gateway project. Northern Gateway project is generally located west of 35E in northern Louisville. It is envisioned to be, Northern Gateway project is envisioned to be an urban village with 300 acres of land that will have wide open spaces, trails, transit-oriented housing and commercial, and Summit Avenue will be a tree-lined street with enhanced sidewalks that'll provide for the land uses, the proposed land uses in Northern Gateway. West College Street is another upcoming complete streets project that's currently in the final stages of design. You see that the curb extensions at the intersection and the mid-block curb extensions provide for traffic calming on this residential street. Also, the curb extensions provide room for providing landscaping. To the right, you see the images showing the improvements at mid-block and also at the intersection. East College Street is another city project that's just begun design. East College from Mill to Railroad is also a transit-oriented project that will provide access to the Old Town train station. It has been designed to have 2 on-street bike lanes and a parking lane on the south side of the street. And the sidewalks are, the existing sidewalks are 4 foot wide, but the proposed sidewalks are 5 foot wide. That'll enjoy, pedestrians will enjoy shade from the trees that will be installed. Elm Street is also another project. Elm Street from Charles Street to Mill Street is another project that's currently under design. It has 5 foot wide sidewalks on the outside that's going to be buffered from the travel lanes with the landscape buffer and also on-street parking. Bicyclists will share the road. Share the road arrows will be painted on the street.
All right, thank you, Sagar. Southwest Parkway is another area where we've identified an opportunity for a new complete streets project. This is the main thoroughfare through the triangle here in Louisville, which is one of the most densely populated areas in Louisville. It's also a location where a new future city park is proposed. We wanted to make sure that all the residents from the apartment complexes along Southwest Parkway would have a safe and clear method to get to this new park. Right now, Southwest Parkway has 17-foot drive aisles on either end, and though it's only 35 miles per hour, there's a lot of speeding in that area with the curve. So we wanted to make sure there was enhanced pedestrian crossing and large sidewalks so people could safely cross Southwest Parkway to get to the new park. Currently, we've received funding from the CDBG, a transportation reinvestment program from DCTA, and we're requesting funds for a blue-green gray grant from the COG. and all these grant funds will be used for the design of this project, which will be a future CIP project here in Louisville. So now I wanted to talk about why the city of Louisville needed an effective and updated complete streets policy. The first reason is we just want to ensure the mobility of all users here in Louisville. I think it's important to note that over 33% of residents do not drive a car. This includes children under the age of 16 and many elderly that no longer have access to an automobile. We want to make sure here in Louisville that we're providing opportunities for all of our residents. Another important thing to note is, and I know I've said this earlier in the presentation, but it's not just about pedestrians, it's not just about bicyclists or transit users, but we want to make sure in areas where appropriate that our freight traffic can get to where they need to go efficiently as well. So we don't want to forget any users when developing our streets in Louisville. Safety is another large concern and another opportunity for complete streets. Right now, pedestrian death is on the rise in America, and especially in the DFW region. Just in Louisville, we've had a growth of pedestrian and bicycle incidents. There was just 20 in 2018, and that's grown every year and has been now up to 35. And these are just reported incidents to Louisville's police department. In a recent study by the Dangerous by Design, even though during the height of the pandemic, when we had less cars on the roads than ever in history, pedestrian death still was skyrocketing. And a big reason for this is just the design of our roadways not accommodating all of our transportation users. On top of that, complete streets can offer crime prevention through environmental design, or CPTED. Basically, the tenets of CPTED are when you design a street efficiently, you're actually deterring crime with that design of the street. This involves pedestrian lighting, just effective street design. The more people on your streets, the more eyes on the road, the less crime that happens. And there's a lot of research to back up CPTED. Health is another large benefit of complete streets. Just in Denton County, obesity is on the rise, especially with children, as well as asthma. And in the United States, obesity is on the rise. So there's a lot of data to back up that if you provide good walking opportunities in neighborhoods, people will get more moderate activity. And I think anyone who lives near a trail system can attest to that if there's a place for healthy activity, people will use it. So it's a good idea to start building our streets to encourage this healthy activity. Equity is another huge benefit of complete streets. Want to make sure that all communities have a safe place to walk. It's critical for community health. Another thing to know is just the ownership of a car is a huge burden on moderate and low-income houses, and can be a little less than $10,000 a year just for the upkeep of a vehicle. If we're providing the opportunity for people to maybe go down from a 3-car household to a 2-car, or a 2-car to a 1-car, we are making Louisville a more equitable community. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, with all the long-range goals that mention elements of complete streets, streets account for the greatest amount of city-owned property. So having a complete and effective complete street policy, we can efficiently accomplish our plans, since that's where the area in the city that we have control over. So it's an effective way to make sure that a lot of our long-range plans are being accomplished is with complete street design. Furthermore, complete streets do enhance economic development. Houses and walkable areas are worth more. The businesses want to operate in areas that have alternative transportation options. And then finally, funding opportunities are a big push for an effective complete street policy. We have mobility grants from the COG, then the COG policy bundle. These are all opportunities that need an effective complete streets policy for these projects, as well as things like the TRIP funds and the Blue green-gray funds, which I talked earlier about with the Southwest Park. These are all grant funds that can be acquired with Complete Streets. So now I would like to speak to what this proposed policy will look like and how we're updating our current policy. So first, with this policy, we want to ensure that there's a process for evaluating all streets. Right now, the city of Louisville is doing complete street projects. Sagar went down a list of 5 or 6 streets that we're already doing this, but with the policy, we can ensure that all future projects we'll continue to look at complete streets with future street projects here in Louisville. So we want to make sure that these streets are, again, context sensitive. We want to make sure that the community is involved and we're providing the communities the streets they want. There's some neighborhoods in Louisville where they don't want sidewalks. They're comfortable with walking on the street. We want to make sure we're listening to the community and we're using funds the best way we can. Going with that, we want to make sure there's a standardized process or a checklist that would go with every street project that looks at all the elements of complete streets. And when those complete streets are presented to City Council, that we speak to complete streets on all of our street projects. And if they're not being provided, that elements aren't being provided with these streets, that we have a clear reason why. And we also want to make sure that all the stakeholders are involved with these street projects. Typically engineering, public services, planning, but we want to make sure that parks with their trail system and overlay, sustainability, all of our franchise utilities, DCTA rep, want to make sure everyone's brought together when looking at our street projects. We'll sure, I'll let Sagar speak.
The design of the complete streets will be informed by the best practices that are adopted nationwide using the AASHTO guidelines for the development of bike and pedestrian facilities, Federal Highway Administration's guidance, Institute of Transportation Engineers, and the National Association of City Transportation Officials. Compliance would be informed by the Texas Accessibility Guidelines and PROVAG and ADA to be compliant. We have prepared some examples of what our typical streets would look like. Our typical streets on the Thoroughfare Plan are 50-foot residential street. Our collector streets are 60-foot, 2-lane collector streets are 60-foot, 4-lane collector streets are 80-foot right-of-way. Our arterial streets are 100-foot right-of-way. And we just wanted to present what complete streets might look like on these streets. The first one is a typical 50-foot residential street. You see 5-foot wide sidewalks on both sides of the street. Normally our sidewalks used to be 4 foot, so it's a little bit wider than that. So everything else almost stays the same. We have parking on both sides of the street now. It will stay the same. We may paint sharrows where it makes the most sense, looking at the Trails Master Plan and providing connectivity for a bike network. This is an example of a 60-foot 2-lane undivided collector street. This shows 10-foot wide trails on both sides of the street. This is just an example. It could be designed in any way, having a trail on one side, a wider sidewalk on the other side, just based on the context we'll be looking at. And the trees provide shade for the pedestrians, and there's a 2-lane roadway. This is our typical 80-foot 4-lane undivided collector street. Example, Old Orchard Lane. So in this example, we're showing a 10-foot wide trail on one side of the street, 6-foot wide sidewalk on the other side. And they have shade from landscaping and street lighting. A typical 100-foot principal arterial street. Arterial streets tend to have higher speeds on the roadway, so the on-street bike lanes are shown to be buffered with a 3-foot buffer for bicyclist safety, and then pedestrians are using the 6-foot wide sidewalks buffered with the landscaping. And in an industrial area, 100-foot arterial street may look like this. We may not have a need for a bike lane, but having sidewalks on both sides. An example would be Spinks Road, which is a 100-foot right-of-way roadway, and then landscaping in the median and landscaping on the outside of the street.
So a final element of this proposed policy would be to make sure we have clear exceptions. So complete streets aren't appropriate for all roadways here in Louisville, but we want to make sure the exceptions are written into the policy and that there's a method for dealing with them. So with this policy, only the city engineer would be able to approve these exceptions. These exceptions would be things such as bicycles and pedestrians aren't appropriate for every roadway. So obviously you don't want bicyclists on your highways. If there's disproportionate costs for a complete street project with the benefit we're getting out of it versus the cost, we just want to make sure these are all things we're considering. If there's not enough right-of-way available for all the complete streets elements, if we can only provide so many elements. And if there's direct conflicts with already existing City of Louisville policy. And of course, as mentioned earlier, if it's a detriment to neighborhood character, if the neighborhood just doesn't want these elements, we want to make sure we're providing what each neighborhood wants and needs. And then project cost impacts.
These are the remaining projects from the 2015 bond program. Design has not begun yet. Just wanted to illustrate which projects could be good candidates for complete streets and what the cost impact may be. North Cowan Avenue between Purnell Street to Mill Street has more residential and a little bit of commercial on the south side, which would make it a good fit for complete streets. And on the northern end, there's more of a commercial and less residential, but it's a moderate to good fit for incorporating complete street elements. The cost for the street project is $12 million. Incorporating complete streets may increase the cost by 30%. Valley Parkway and Civic Circle are very good candidates for complete streets because of the public government offices in the area and the type of land use. The total combined cost right now is $7 million. Incorporating complete streets will vary between 20 to 50% depending on the scope of improvements that we would want. Railroad Street between Main Street to Business 121 is also in the 2015 bond program. It has very limited right-of-way. The land use is industrial, mostly industrial, a little bit of commercial, so it is not a good fit to provide complete street elements for this project, so not a good candidate. Louisville Valley 4 subdivision, located west of Garden Ridge Boulevard, north of Main Street. It has limited opportunity for providing complete street elements, maybe wider sidewalks. So the background cost is $13 million. Adding complete street elements may increase it by 2 to 5%. Indian Oaks neighborhood, located near the Thrive Rec Center, it has large residential lots, and most residents do not want sidewalks. So it is not a good candidate for doing complete streets, so there would be no cost impact for that. So the cost impact for these projects will vary based on the context that they're in. As you can see, they can range anywhere from 2% to 50%, depending on the context and depending on the scope that we would want to do. And we wanted to present it to the council and see what they would think about the cost impact.
So if we receive direction from Planning and Zoning and City Council to move forward with a new policy, going over all the items we had discussed earlier, what we're looking for this new policy, these are the next steps we would like to move forward with. So first, we would like to draft that complete streets policy. Of course, we'll bring it back before Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council for approval. And we would like to draft a checklist for complete streets with this policy, and these checklists will be used for each roadway project moving forward in Louisville. as well as training all plan review staff on complete streets. We're currently working on widening the base sidewalk standards, which are already in the code overhaul and will be implemented once the code overhaul moves forward. Also, the Thoroughfare Plan has been budgeted to update the Thoroughfare Plan. Right now, our Thoroughfare Plan is just a map that shows all of the street systems in Louisville with the right-of-way. So we would like the new Thoroughfare Plan to function as a mobility plan. So we would like the mobility plan to give consideration to all users. We would like it to mention the complete streets policy. We would like to have actual street sections as a part of this mobility plan. Sagar went over some examples for each of our road types now, but we would like to have a menu of options of different complete streets elements where they're most appropriate. And we would like to bring together all the existing mobility provisions from our long-range plans. Oftentimes, these mobility plans will have lists and a quick abstract of existing plans, but we want to make sure we're considering our Trails Master Plan where we have bike spines or pedestrian spines. When we're making sure we're looking at that, our Sustainability Master Plan, all these elements when designing streets. And also use this as an opportunity to identify areas such as Southwest Parkway, which are a good location for complete streets. Finally, we would like to have performance measures listed on the city's metrics dashboards. These could be things such as linear feet of bikeways provided, linear feet of sidewalks widened or provided in Louisville, as well as new curb ramps installed to ADA specs. I know we've been talking a lot about complete streets to y'all, but we are more than happy to answer any questions you may have with this updated policy, or if you have any questions about complete streets in general.
Thank you for an excellent presentation, John and Sagar. It was very informative. It's nice to see this going on and to have the documentation for it. Do we have any discussion, commissioners, or questions for them?
Probably just a general comment, I guess. When you mentioned, I guess it was COG as far as funding source with the grant, and there were also a couple of other grants. Is there a way to, I guess you don't really know if you're going to be approved, but is there a way to maybe attach a dollar amount that could be brought in through the grants as you present this to the council? It may be, it may help to show what other outside funding, I guess, you could get or could qualify for.
So I do have those dollar amounts for that specific Southwest Parkway. So if you're interested, we received $259,000 and some change from CDBG. $425,000 we're asking for the Transportation Reinvestment Program. That's from DCTA. And $75,000 for the Blue, Green, Gray grant with COG. On top of that, I know the policy bundle is a large funding source. I don't have the funding number for you tonight.
As a CPA, I'm always about the cost and, the return on investment. You mentioned cost-benefit analysis, but if that's being presented, I think that's an important part as well to show that, there would be additional monies that this could qualify for.
Right.
So,
thank you.
I just want to add that Main Street and Mill Street Improvements Project was funded by NCT COG, partially funded by NCT COG due to the transit-oriented development and the complete street element to it, $3 million of funding from NCT COG.
thank you. Great presentation, by the way.
So are you needing for us tonight to make a motion to move this forward?
So the purpose of
No?
tonight was to inform you of the new policy update.
Okay.
To make sure you're informed of what we're working on and moving forward.
Okay, so this is just an informative presentation, nothing we need to act on tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Any other
I have a
comments?
question.
Yes.
Would this strictly be a reallocation of existing right-of-way usage? For instance, in the neighborhoods that you said, like in Indian Oaks, for example, that was not a good candidate for it. But those are big lots and the residents don't want sidewalks there. Is there just unused right-of-way that looks like it's part of the lot, or is there something else going on in that right-of-way?
Right, so for the most part, the right-of-way that's listed on the Thoroughfare Plan, and so we're just trying to
better use the right-of-way as listed there. So the same right-of-way we have, just using it in a different way. And that may be slightly, like in the case of Southwest Parkway, we had the 17-foot drive lanes there, which are really encourage higher speeds than was posted. So by making those smaller to typically a 12 or 11-foot drive, using traffic calming, this still allows cars to use the right-of-way as prescribed for automobiles, but that gives you a lot more space to provide these additional elements.
Any more comments or discussion?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I believe that concludes our business for the Planning and Zoning Commission, and at this time I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Motion is by Karen,
Second.
second by Aram. And vote now. Motion passes. We are adjourned. At this time, we will go ahead and call to order the Overlay District Board. We do have a quorum present, and the first item is to consider the minutes of the July 20th, 2021 Overlay District Board meeting. And if we have no corrections or additions, may I have a motion?
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Aram, second by Sheila. Motion passes 6-0. We have one item for consideration for the Overlay District Board this evening. This is a consideration of one alternative standard associated with a minor modification of an existing site for On the Border located at 1890 South Stemmons Freeway, legally described as Waters Ridge Addition Phase 2, Lot 2B, Block 1, Zoned Light Industrial District, as requested by Robert Pruitt, Urban Structure, on behalf of KGGK Venture 2, LLC, the property owner.
Good evening, Commissioners. The On the Border is an existing restaurant that is located to the east of I-35 and south of Corporate Street. Generally, we've seen a lot of these alternative standards cases come in before you because they were triggered by external remodeling or a new tenant moving in and wanting to put up a new either front or a signage. With this case, they're voluntarily coming forth to make minor modifications to the site to comply with our overlay district requirement as the text dot acquisition is happening. So there are no changes proposed to the building itself or the signage. However, they're trying to bring everything else, all the other elements into the compliance, which includes their pedestrian circulation, their parking, and their landscape requirement. The text dot is taking away a strip along the 35 frontage that's about 3,000 square feet or so, but this affects their existing 24 parking spaces. Even with this removal, they still exceed the required parking by 8 spaces. So what they're asking for alternative standard is actually to keep the landscape island. They do not meet the width or the 1 per 8 foot spacing. However, the landscape trees planted are 19, which exceed the 11 that's required. And with this removal of the parking, they're converting that concrete space into a landscape strip. So our requirement for the transition district requires that you provide a 5-foot sidewalk with a 4-foot amenity zone where the grass and trees can be located. In this case, TxDOT is actually proposing to build a 6-foot sidewalk within their right-of-way. So the applicant is proposing a landscape strip that's about 6 to 19 feet 9 feet wide, and they will be planting 7 new trees in that space. This is an administrative modification, and staff granted it because you're coming up with 6 foot versus 5 foot and 4 foot landscape versus 6 to 19 foot landscape. So staff is recommending that the overlay district board approve the alternative standard A, which is to allow the trees in the existing landscape area within the parking lot to remain as is. Staff is here if you have any questions.
Commissioners, do we have any comments or questions on this item? No? Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the alternative standard as requested.
Motion is by Aram,
Second?
second by Jordan. We'll vote now. Motion passes 6-0. And that being the final item on this particular board, may I have a motion for adjournment, please?
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Karen.
Second.
Second, I heard Alvin first, so a second by Alvin. Vote. Motion passes. Overlay board is adjourned. Next, we have the meeting of the Transportation Board. I'm going ahead and call that to order. We have a quorum present. And the first item is the consideration of the minutes from the July 6th, 2021 Transportation Board meeting. If there are no additions or corrections, may I have a motion, please?
Move to approve.
Motion by Karen.
Second.
Second by Alvin. Vote. And motion passes 6-0. We are to consider tonight an amendment to Section 1587, limitations on the turning around, prohibiting U-turns on southbound Josie Lane at the intersection of the Memorial Elementary School driveway, and make a recommendation to the City Council regarding the amendment.
Good evening, Commissioners. LISD just opened the new Memorial Elementary School, which created an intersection on Josie Lane, and we installed a signal there, and they put in a left turn lane headed northbound, but heading southbound, the left turn lane hasn't been installed yet due to the middle school that's going to go in the future across the street from the elementary school. And we've noticed people making U-turns at this intersection in an active 50-mile-an-hour lane of traffic. So we're requesting the approval to have the no U-turn at this intersection until the left turn is installed with the middle school.
Sounds like a good idea. Any questions or discussion? No? If not, may I have a motion on this item, please?
I move that we recommend to the City Council to amend the ordinance to prohibit U-turns on southbound Josie Lane at the Memorial Elementary School driveway.
The motion is by Aram.
Second.
Second by Sheila. Vote now. Motion passes 6-0. That being our final thing for the Transportation Board, I will call for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Karen,
Second.
second by Sheila. Vote now. Transportation Board is adjourned. And we come to the final item tonight for the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee. And I'll go ahead and call that committee to order now, and we do have a quorum present. we need to approve the minutes of the August 21st, 2018 meeting. And if we don't have any corrections or additions on that, may I have a motion for those, please?
Move to approve.
Motion by Sheila,
Second.
second by Aram. Vote now. And the minutes are approved 6-0. The next item is a selection of a CIAC chairman and vice chairman. We've never really done this before that I'm aware of. I'm sure we have, but it's not a recent memory.
You'll notice that the last meeting minutes was from 2018, so it has been a while since this board has assembled in this capacity as the Capacity Improvements Advisory Committee. We did historically have a chairperson and a vice chairperson, and actually they were different than the Planning Commission chairperson. It doesn't have to be that way. You certainly could have the same person do both roles as you have tonight for the previous three boards. So that would really be up to you all to make that decision. But since it has been 2018 since we appointed one, we probably, and she's actually on the city council now, so we will have to replace Christian
Definitely
Green.
need to address this, yes. Okay. So is there any discussion on this tonight? Recommendation? Nomination?
I'm fine with keeping it like P&Z and...
So are you nominating me? Is what
I'm
you're saying?
nominating. If you want it.
Okay. I've been nominated, moved and seconded. Do I have a, guess we could take a vote. We had a motion by Aram and a second by Karen.
Hold on, let me get that in here real quick.
I guess that was a motion.
Can you vote now? Motion passes 6-0. If we will continue in that vein, then I suppose we can go ahead and perhaps nominate Aram to be our vice chair.
I move for the nomination of Aram to be the vice chair.
Motion by Sheila.
Second.
Second by Alvin. Vote now. Motion passes 6-0. Okay, so the next item is to review our responsibilities.
All right, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Keith Marvin. I'm the Director of Public Services, and in that capacity, I'm our staff representative to the Capital Improvements and Advisory Committee. It's been actually 3 years since we've been here in this capacity, and I like to blame the pandemic on that, but that would be a little bit of a stretch. It's my responsibility to get here to this board twice annually, and have not done a very good job of that. So I'm here to make up for that, and there's going to be a lot of information in the report. I'm going to try to get through it quickly and hopefully not bog down too much. But a little bit about the history and purpose of this board, right? So you are an advisory board to the City Council on land use assumptions, which we did adopt a new land use assumptions program in 2018 when we were here prior. Also periodic review of the impact fee and capital improvement plans, which we adopted brand new capital improvement plans for both water and wastewater in 2018 as well. Also monitor and evaluate the implementation of the capital improvement plans, and I'm here to talk a little bit about that tonight. And then we prepare semi-annual reports evaluating the progress of the CIP, and we present that to you, including collection of impact fees. And I actually have here, and this was sent out to you previously, the report on that, and actually it details out every 6-month period since we were here in 2018. And then advise the city on the need to update and revise the land use assumptions plan and the capital improvement and impact fee collections. A little bit on the history. So the city adopted the capital recovery fee. I use those terms interchangeably. Impact fees and capital recovery fees are really the same thing. We adopted that program in 1986, made some changes from 1988 through 1990 as the program was modified to comply with state law that was being changed. The city is required by the Texas Local Government Code to review those capital improvement plans and land use assumptions every 5 years. So we'll be back before you in 2023 with new plans. It's doubtful that we will have to update the land use assumption plans again, because we did go quite thoroughly through all of the Louisville planned redevelopment that would happen and all of the development within Castle Hills that would happen. So it's very likely that our planning folks will certify that the land use assumption and population projections done in 2018 are still valid that 5 years later. That's been our history. We've updated that plan about every 10 years and the master plan every 5 years. So as I mentioned, we did last present to you in 2018. We adopted the land use assumptions, the water and wastewater master plans, and we did make recommendations to City Council on the adoption of new capital recovery fees. So those capital improvement plans, they include water and wastewater, and I've got the different elements of those here on the screen: water supply and treatment, pump stations, storage tanks, both ground and elevated, water distribution and transmission, water system planning expenses, and we'll talk a little bit more about what some of those are. On the wastewater CIP, again, treatment facilities, lift stations and force mains, wastewater collection lines, and again, system planning expenses. So when we calculate capital improvement, when we calculate capital recovery fees or impact fees, we have to do that based solely on the expenses we incur to serve new development. So you'll see on these lists below existing water lines as well as proposed water lines. So an existing line that was constructed with excess capacity to serve some future development, we can recover the cost that the city incurred for that excess capacity through the application and collection of those utility impact fees. So you'll see in this table each of those elements above, some existing, some proposed. And again, we can only recover costs that serves that future development. So if I have to rebuild a line because it's aging and needs to be reconstructed, if I put it back in the same size and the same capacity, I can't collect capital recovery fees from developers for that, right? That's a city expense. There's no new capacity there. It's only those lines that have excess capacity or that are built specifically to serve developing areas within the community. One of the big items on both of these, on the water side, we've got proposed water supply and storage facilities. And then on the other side, the wastewater side, we have proposed wastewater treatment facilities. I'm going to take a few minutes and talk about what's exciting to me, some exciting developments on those plants, our water plant, our wastewater plant. And then here's the information on that capital recovery fee calculation. Again, based on the cost to serve additional development, existing lines are ones that were built with excess capacity. Proposed ones are ones that will be constructed when the capacity is needed. And then developers and home builders pay the capital recovery fee or impact fee based on their specific project demand. And on the right-hand side, you can see those are the adopted capital recovery fee rates. And they're based on that meter size, that water meter size. So if you build 10 homes with 3/4-inch meters, you're going to be charged based on 10 of those 3/4-inch meters, that top line, water, wastewater, and then the total in that far column. So that's how we're collecting revenue to fund those expenses that we've incurred. So that's primarily item number 4 on here, where we've talked about the CIAC responsibilities and a little bit of the history. So are there any questions about that before I move on to the report? So, Madam Chairman, if you're good with it, I will move on to item number 5. And I want to mention to you that I thought that you all might enjoy a little more detailed information on some studies that we've been undergoing, specifically on the water plant and the wastewater plant. I do have an obligation, though, to let you know that this report contains all of those review periods that are labeled on the front. Starts on page 6. We talk about how many permits were issued, how much money was collected for impact fees or capital recovery fees, and then in conclusion, we have not received any written complaints about perceived inequities or inadequacies in regard to the capital improvements plans or the impact fee requirements. So with that having been said, I thought y'all might have some interest in, well, here's the 2018 wastewater master plan. You can see the red is existing, the blue is proposed. One thing that I want to highlight is we did on here talk about capacity needs down at the wastewater plant, and I want to talk a little bit about that plant. And then here's the water master plan, and again, the red is existing, the blue is proposed. We've got, some significant needs as we continue to develop in Far East Louisville and Castle Hills, and those are all addressed in there. But I want to talk about long-range water supply and water treatment, and so that is also addressed in here. But I thought y'all might really enjoy this, and I'm going to try to go through it quickly. It can get very detailed, and if you have a specific question, stop me, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to try not to get bogged down in the details, but I want you to know the level of effort that we're going into on these. So here's a picture of our Prairie Creek wastewater treatment plant. Right now, it's permitted for 12 million gallons per day, so that's untreated wastewater coming from the city of Louisville as well as Castle Hills. We treat all of the wastewater from Castle Hills. 12 million gallon permitted capacity. I want to talk a little bit about what's driving the needs, about our efforts, and then some recommended approaches. So the need for a master plan. So the TCEQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, they regulate our treatment process, both water and wastewater. They have they call it a 75-90 rule. When we hit 75% of our permitted capacity, we have to be in design for expansion of that wastewater plant. When we hit 90%, we have to be under construction. So if you'll see that bottom line says we're at 9.784 million gallons per day of that 12 million gallon per day permitted facility, right? So we're in the 75%. We need to be under design. This effort that I'm going to go through with you tonight was the beginning of that design, and I'll talk a little bit at the end of what the next steps are. Here's a graph, and that bottom line is our flow rate, and you can see we're at that 9.75 on the far left side, and then it looks like we crossed the 90% at just about 2024. So we have to be under construction for that plant expansion in 2024, and we're headed in that direction. So here's a picture of our existing plant. A lot of interesting pieces out there. The large Roman numerals represent 3 different plants. Our plant actually consists of 3 plants. Plant 3 there, right in the middle, is actually built in the 1950s. And I've got a picture here in a minute, but that is one of the way I've been told, there are only 4 operating plants that are designed like this. It's now the name of it has escaped me. It's a trickling filter plant, and it's the oldest one that we've got here on the property, and it's one of just a few left in existence. I'm not going to get into too much detail other than plant 1 on the top left is from the 70s, and plant 2 is the most recent one, built in '87 and expanded in 2013. So here's the picture of that trickling filter. What it does is it sprays that, and it's supposed to be actually rotating on that screen, but it's not. It sprays that liquid onto the material rather than covering the material. And this is supposed to be moving too. I'm not sure why the pictures aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, but that's our outlet. That's where the treated wastewater goes back into the creek. So the master planning effort included hydraulic modeling, condition assessment, capacity analysis, and process improvements and alternatives. And as we as we looked at this expansion, we actually ended up with a whole bunch of different possible options. And so as we looked at the options, we looked at both the cost of the options and then non-cost alternatives or non-cost comparison points. And we, as we modeled each one, we looked at what would be the capital cost, what's the operational cost, and then what are those non-cost, items. And as we got into that, we chose the best value, based on those non-cost items. So here it'll show you even more specifically. So here's those non-cost criteria we use. We looked at regulatory. Obviously, we have to meet regulatory. We looked at reliability and redundancy. We looked at operation and maintenance. We looked at environmental concerns, social concerns, schedule and constructability, and then reuse potential. And we weighted each of those. And obviously, we have to comply with the regulatory, and then we have to have a reliable and redundant plant. So those two are at the top. And then we rated those non-cost criteria, and then we put those against the cost. And on this chart, we want to be as far to the right, which was the non-economic criteria score, the highest score we could get, and then as far towards the bottom of the page as we could, because that's where the cost scale is. So at the bottom of the page is the lower cost. We boiled it down to 3 different options, and we chose alternative 1 because it had the highest non-economic score as well as the best cost. So that was the alternative we went with. And this is what we arrived at, which is the proposed plant layout. And I could spend an hour going through this, and I'm not going to do it unless y'all want me to. But to highlight a couple of things, those red circles, that plant 3 in the middle, we're removing that old system because it treats the least amount of wastewater economically, and it takes up the most space on the facility. So it's in our way, and we're going to have to remove it. The same with the 2 other round basins at the top; those will be removed. And then that newest plant, that plant 2, that aeration basin, will actually be expanded. And then the orange is reused items, so items that exist on the plant today, but will be repurposed for another purpose. And so a lot of the stuff we're repurposing, and then green is new. So either brand new, or as with the basin in Basin 2, we're going to try to expand that existing basin, and we'll actually rotate that in a different direction. So there's a lot on this slide, but that's the design that our consultants came up with. This is HDR Engineering. They came up with this design as the most economical one with the greatest non-cost benefit to the city. And then this CIP schedule, you'll look at this. This is a 27-year program, right? So in wastewater, right, we don't do anything fast. The biggest bang for the buck right here, though, is you'll see in 2024. So on this plan, I know it's probably hard to see it on your screen, but the blue is construction, the red is design. So the first year on this is 2021. That's this year. We're going to begin the detailed design, right? We finished the master planning. Now we're going to do the detailed design. We're going to start breaking off pieces of that master plan and designing them and moving to construction on those. So that first year is design. That funding is in place. The next 3 years, we are funding the construction. In our world, we can't go build a $30 million project unless we have $30 million in the bank to pay for it. So the only way I can let that project in 2024 for the construction is if I start funding this over the next 3 years. And each of those boxes is $11,200,000 and some odd thousand. So we're actually looking at about a $35 million project. And actually, you can see in 2022, there's another blue box. That's actually an electrical upgrade project that actually comes first. And so this is a laid out plan that gets us ultimately to a build out treatment capacity of, I believe it's 21 million gallons per day. At the end of this project that starts in 2024, we'll be at 16 million gallons per day. So that will get us a little bit ahead, but it doesn't get us all the way to our build out So that's really the end of the wastewater piece, and I know I breezed through that pretty quickly, and there's a lot of detail that you may want to know about, or you may not have any interest in knowing about it. I think the big thing that I'm trying to convey to you is the master plan that we did in 2018 was just a piece of the puzzle. It identified that we had a need at our wastewater plant, and we needed to go dive deep into how do we do the wastewater expansion, right? And so we've hired a firm, we've done that, we've designed it. Now we're ready to start the detailed design and then the construction. So if there's no questions on the wastewater, I'll move on to the water piece. We did something very similar on the water side, comprehensive master plan on the water side. On this side, y'all may or may not know, we have our own our own water treatment plant. We treat 20 million gallons per day at that plant, but then we also buy treated water from Dallas Water Utilities. So right now we buy 9.5 million gallons per day from Dallas Water Utilities. It's already been treated, delivered to 3 of our pump stations here in town, and we distribute that as well as what we treat in our plant. The master plan that we've got here, this is looking at a build-out need of 61 million gallons per day. So if you do the math, we can do about 30 today. So that's telling us in our land use assumptions, our population projections, that it's only about half of what we need ultimately. So how do we get there? So we did a whole lot of modeling. We did a lot of facilities condition assessment, evaluation of different water supply scenarios. So I mentioned Dallas Water Utilities, our plant. Upon annexation of Castle Hills, we will actually assume a contract with the Upper Trinity Regional Water District for treated water that's delivered to Castle Hills right now. So that becomes a third supply source. We wanted to study how much do we purchase from them, how much do we purchase from Dallas, and how much do we treat at our plant. So we did a whole bunch of analysis. We did the same cost comparison and non-cost comparison. And so ultimately we came up with a whole bunch of scenarios. But on this table, first scenario was, hey, what if we shut down the Louisville water plant? What if we just went to purchase only? And so scenario number 1, Louisville was producing 0 million gallons a day of treated water. We were buying 33 from DWU and 28 from Upper Trinity for our total of 61. Scenario 2, we kept the plant the same at 20. We bought 38 from DWU and 3 from Upper Trinity. That 3 number is what they're supplying today to Castle Hills. Option 3, or scenario 3, was 30, 28 at Dallas, and 3 from Upper Trinity. And option 4 was a 40 MGD plant, 18 from Dallas and 3 from Upper Trinity. And then we came up with capital and operating and maintenance costs for each of those scenarios. It turned out that option 3 was the best non-cost factor as well as the best cost factor for us. And in that modeling, we found that anytime we got more than 28 million gallons a day from Dallas, we started to have other system problems that required us to put additional pump station and storage out in the system. And so we put a hard stop at 28 MGD from Dallas. Again, with our non-cost criteria and the weighting, level of service is most important, reliability and flexibility next, resiliency and redundancy, operating complexity, and supplier relationships. That's how we weighted those non-cost factors. And we did the same kind of analysis with the non-cost factors and the costs. And again, here's our chart where we want to be as far to the right and as far towards the bottom as we can. And at this point, we actually broke scenario 3 into an A, B, and a C. And we went with scenario 3. And then we started looking at plant alternatives. So we've made the decision that, hey, our water plant needs to be 30 MGD, right? Today it's 20, needs to be 30. When does that happen? What does it look like? And so here's the picture. Bottom right is a picture of our existing plant with the ground storage tanks out there. And you can see the plant is the top left square, and then those 4 circles are storage tanks, 3 2 million gallons and 1 million gallon. But then we looked at all the different options, our intake structures, our disinfection methodologies, how are we treating the water? We went through an extensive analysis, and for each item, and this is just an example of the raw water intake structures where we take the water out of the lake and bring it to the plant. We looked at the red numbers at the top are the non-cost factors, and then you've got the costs in there, and you can see in each case we selected the box in red, and we went through, gosh, there was dozens of these different items, and we went through each one of them. Here's another example, ozone. Right now we don't use ozonation, but we want to get to ozonation, and that's a treatment method that would improve our taste and odor during certain periods of the year. So chlorine, another example. I'm not going to go into detail on all these, but I do want to get to the plant, the layout of the plant. This is the existing drawing of the plant. Again, we've got those 3 2 million gallon reservoirs and then the 1 million. So if we look at this option, and so this is alternate 6B. This is a compressed layout where if I go back to, you can see the plant property to the left, the HHW property where we run our events out there and collect the household hazardous waste. City owns that property just to the right of the plant. And then there's another piece of city-owned property further to the right of that. And so looking at this option versus a second option here that actually took more property, we made this presentation to council at their council retreat earlier this year, and they selected this option, told us to move forward with this. This is a $64 million total cost plant expansion here. So again, another capital program, another 25-year long program. Again, red is engineering, blue is construction. All of the items on the left-hand side, and you'll see it spread out over a number of years again. I mentioned earlier the build-out population has a demand, a water demand. How do we meet that demand? And as I move to the next screen here, you'll see that I've overlaid the capital program for the wastewater treatment plant with the capital program for the water treatment plant. So we are prioritizing the capital program at wastewater because it's driven by regulation. I have to meet those TCEQ regulations. On the water side, right, to meet 61 MGD, you saw on this option, we were going to buy 28 total from Dallas. So right now we're taking 9.5 million gallons of water a day from Dallas. I can go all the way up to 28.5 before I have to build this plant, or 28 before I have to build this plant. So I've got some flexibility on the water side to fit it in where we have the dollars available to build it. And that's a big driving factor. We work very closely with our finance folks, with our budget folks, and we try to make sure that we have the money programmed in the right year so that we don't need more than they can provide in any given year. And the other side of the coin is I don't want to miss some of that money. If that money is available to build something, I want to go build it, right? And one main reason I want to do that is because of the cost escalation. Things get more expensive the longer you wait to build them. So we're trying to fit this into our bond program and get these things built to provide good service to our residents, right? So I know I've been standing up here talking for a long time, and I've gotten into some really deep weeds that y'all may or may not have any interest in, but I just want to make sure that you know that your professional staff on the utility is on top of this stuff. I've got a manager over the utility operations that is running this. He's working with these consultants. We actually are adding, on 10-1, we're adding a capital improvements coordinator position in public services as well, whose responsibility will be to run these projects as they move forward. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have one.
Yes, sir.
Louisville is not growing like the outside of the area, like Frisco and all that, but I understand your presentation was very good, but I'm still concerned because I want to know if we're going to be able to be in good shape for the next 3 years with our water, with the growth, if it grows here in Louisville.
Yeah, so the nice thing about the Dallas Water Utilities contract that we have, so we actually took a bump today. When we take, not today, June 1st, we took a bump, which means we started buying more. So prior to June 1st, we were buying 9 million gallons a day. And water consumption in Louisville and the Metroplex in general is very cyclical, right? So a hot, dry summer, we use more water than any other time of the year. And we try to predict what that increase in demand is going to be. So when we took that extra bump this year, the previous year, we were I won't say challenged to meet the demand, because if we ever get to the point where we're challenged to meet the demand, we can call Dallas and take a bump immediately. They are programmed to be able to do that for us. We took it June 1st because of billing. They bill us based on June 1st being the start of a water year. So they do that intentionally, right? It's the beginning of summer, and they know that we're really not going to need that bump until maybe August, you know, when it's really hot and really dry. So if we take it in August, they bill us all the way back to June 1st. So we made a decision this year, we were going to take the bump on June 1st, and we were going to use as much of that water as possible during the course of the summer. And as we're using that water, we're actually saving a little bit of money on our treatment plant process and our raw water cost because we're taking that treated water. So it's a numbers game, but I know that if we get to a point in the next 3 years where we need more drinking water, we can buy more from Dallas Water Utilities. That option is there for us. In fact, in this plan, we don't actually have additional treated water coming out of our plant for almost 10 years in this program because of the amount of design, regulatory requirements, and of course, balancing it with that wastewater expansion. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
If there's nothing else, I believe item 6 is simply for us to receive comments from the CIAC and forward to the City Council for approval. So I will be presenting this report to the City Council. They've already seen the presentation that I gave to you tonight, but we'll present this report. And if you all have any comments or anything that you would like us to forward to them on your behalf, we would certainly include that. So.
Commissioners?
No.
No, we don't.
Excellent. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that being the last item there, I will go ahead and call for the adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Karen,
Second.
second by Aram. I was wondering, but.
Sorry
so
about that.
I guess we need to bring this back to order. Okay, so I'll go ahead and call the commission back to order again.
Move to accept this report and forward it to the City Council for approval.
Motion is by Karen,
I second.
second by Aram.
You'll have to take a voice vote on this.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and now I will need to adjourn again, please.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Karen,
Second.
second by Aram. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.